Okay. We are going to start now with our cross-sector roundtable on sustainable logistics. And I will first do a bit of an introduction so that you can all get comfortable while I'll take you through the introduction of this roundtable. So I'm Tatum, working at Spring GDS, and we're actually the sponsors of this sustainability lounge for the second year in a row. And part of that hosting is also a chance to talk to you all about sustainability for the next 40 minutes. So that's what we're going to do. And I have a short introduction, and then I will introduce our speakers. So we really see sustainability as a journey. But more importantly, it's a journey we cannot take alone. We all need each other. And as a company, you should look beyond your own operations and take into account your whole value chain. And because it's so important to collaborate when you're thinking about sustainability, we've invited 3 different speakers from different sectors, different fields, to talk with us about their sustainability journey and about the challenges that they face. So I'm going to introduce them now. You can applaud when we introduce them. I will start with Inge in the middle. Inge works... Oh, there's an applause already. The name, yeah. That's a great name. So yeah, Inge is working at AllChiefs. And AllChiefs is a company, a consultancy firm, specialized in sustainable logistics. So Inge works together with a wide range of companies, both logistics companies, but also e-commerce brands, in order to translate sustainability ambitions into real strategies and actions. So I'm very happy she's here. She brings a wide knowledge on both where the industry is today, but also on where it's going and what you have to do as a company to stay ahead. So now give her applause again. Good. And then next I have Charlotte. And Charlotte works at one of our customers, Whittle. And for those of you who don't know Whittle, they're specialized, and I have to say this correctly, bathroom supplies, but then circular. So they get rid of all the plastics, but especially the single-use materials are completely gone from their supply chain. Charlotte is an operations manager, so she brings a more hands-on and operational perspective to the conversation. She balances the sustainability goals of Whittle with topics like growth or customer expectations. So also give her a round of applause. I already see a super supportive crowd. That's nice. And then last, we have Thijs Boel, which is a director of Spring GDS Europe. And Thijs has a lot of experience within the global logistics networks. So he brings both a broad and in-depth perspective on those networks, but also can tell us more about the constraints, the opportunities, and the trade-offs that has to be made when we talk about sustainability in logistics. And he will ground the discussion in the realities of the sector, so to see what is feasible, but also what's not feasible yet when it comes to sustainability. So give him an applause too. Now I'm also going to sit because it's quite warm. So make sure you drink enough. We will also do. And then we're just getting started. So with this different perspective in mind, you see a lot of companies, both in logistics but also e-commerce, having net zero goals by a certain year. So you see a lot of commitments made. But commitments are one thing. Another thing is to actually have those actions in place to reach these net zero goals. And therefore, my first question is to all of our panel members, within your own operations, where do you currently see the biggest gap between the ambition and the feasibility in practice right now? And then I want to first give the floor to Inge, because she has a more industry-wide perspective and give us more context.
Thank you, Tatum. So indeed, if you look at logistics, I think what are the challenges you see is internally at a company. So often you have scope 1, 2, 3 emissions, and if a company has a net zero target, is how do you reach that in the most cost-effective way, right? And what are the scope categories you often focus on first and decarbonize? So that's what I see with more brands or product type companies, is often also raw materials or end-of-life use, those type of emission categories. are also the ones that are prioritized. And I think that's pending the company, how prioritized is logistics. And I think then if you look at logistics decarbonization as one scope, there you see that logistics is somewhat more difficult or has its challenges to decarbonize, right? So one, the reduction levers that bring a lot of reductions like biofuels, electrification, those are the ones that are difficult to implement, hardly available and sometimes somewhat more expensive. And it requires, if you look at implementation, also on efficiencies, it requires often collaboration in the value chain. So logistics is inherently often, you need a lot of parties to come together to make it work. And I think, yes, ambitions are there, but these are, in general, the challenges I see in logistics decarbonization.
Okay, thanks, Inge. I think that creates a natural bridge for Thijs. Is it something you recognize, those challenges, or to get back to the question, the gap between feasibility and ambition?
Yeah, I do see this challenge as well, although if I look at the physical supply chain, so in e-commerce logistics, the solutions are there in part of that supply chain. So when it comes to road and emissions caused by road, there are opportunities and there are possible reductions being made. Let's later talk about that. For us, the biggest challenges in global logistics is actually in air freight. So we see concrete examples where we can actually reduce emissions by smarter transport, different modes of transport, different fuel of transport, smarter shipping, all true. We haven't found the solution yet how to sustainably do that in air freight. So if you have a zero emission goal, and we have that as a company in 2040, our biggest thing to think about is how to solve the equation for air freight, because the technical solutions are not there yet to make that fully sustainable, where they are much more already present in road transport. So there I see the biggest gap in what we want to achieve and what we already know how to do that.
Yeah, all clear. So really, per modality, the challenge is completely different. And for you, Charlotte, how do you, in your own operations, see a gap between both your ambitions but also feasibility in practice?
Yeah, so for us as a brand in the operations and logistics, I would say our biggest challenge is the breadth of options. So when we are tendering out for carriers and looking at the availability, what might be the most cost-efficient or reliable and speedy option might not be someone who's leading the way or pioneering in sustainability. So what I would like to really see more carriers do is sort of raising the bar and setting that benchmark in sustainability.
Interesting. So you're saying that you would want to choose on sustainability on logistics partners, but you also get a bit lost on what's actually already done at those partners.
Yeah, I would say it's not something we're talking about enough, and I think we definitely, as brands do drive the demand, we definitely could do better in the logistics space. I think in terms of like componentry, where we've got very sophisticated materials and there's a lot of options, but I would say in that last mile, it's not something that we're talking about enough when we're tendering.
Good point. And Inge, do you recognize this struggle, or do you see certain leaders in the markets already closing the gap between ambition and feasibility, maybe also to help Charlotte select her carriers?
Yeah, definitely. So I think if you look at the LSP phase, LSP type of companies or the logistics service providers, they are definitely moving into products and setting up their green offering or starting the conversations based on data insight, right? Here's where you see you have the most emissions, what can we do to decarbonize? But there is also on the shipper side, I think they also play an important role, so more the brands, to start also those conversations and move the LSPs to those green propositions or think along. And I think when demand and supply come together, I think that's where things start moving. If not, we'll get stuck.
Yeah, and that creates actually a very good bridge to my next question, because then I wanted to talk about, okay, we know the challenges, but whose responsibility is it to actually have more sustainable logistics in general? Is that the brands like Charlotte, or is it more the logistics providers like Spring GDS, or would you say the regulators? Maybe I can start with you, Thijs, here.
Yeah, it's a good and a not good question.
Okay, thanks.
Because you have to choose, Thijs.
No, because if this balance is not good enough between the three of them, it's a good question, by the way. Yeah? But if you approach it a little bit like it's either this party or that party that has to lead, I don't believe it will move. So I intrinsically believe that if you, for example, let yourself purely be led by regulators, you can do that. You can just sit and wait and see this is a minimum requirement, I go for that. It's an option. If you say, yeah, if the customers are not asking for it or if they're not willing to pay for it, I'm not going to move as a logistical provider. Or you say, yeah, it's the logistics that matters, that really make the impact, so you have to move. I think it doesn't work like that. Or then it doesn't make enough speed. I think it makes more speed if all of these parties in the chain see true value. And then I don't mean true value like I believe in it or not, I want to be a front runner or not. I think if you can make sustainability have additional advantages beyond just sustainability, then you start to create value. Let me create an example. Logistics is a very thin margin business. Everyone knows that. But if you combine sustainability with actual cost reductions, you can combine something. So yes, you have to invest something, but you also get something in return. Or if you say an investment in sustainability delivers something to my brand or my employee engagement, it delivers you something. So if you too much from one angle look at it, I think then it's always a bit of a vicious circle, or everyone is looking at each other, then no one moves. Whereas if all the players in the industry look at themselves and say, yeah, what is my obligation, but also what is my value that I can out of it, then there's much more movement possible. So that's why it's a good question, but the answer is all three, and don't just wait for the other and create the value yourself. Take control yourself.
Okay, that's interesting. And Charlotte, you being the brand, how do you look at that?
I mean, I think Wild is a good example where we are seeing a sort of growing demand from customers for more natural, sustainable options. So I think there is demand, and I think, yes, the brands definitely need to push that. I think from my perspective, we lean on the expertise of the carriers and the logistics providers. So we sort of need to meet at that level where they can show us the solutions, because we may not have that expertise internally.
Yeah, so if you would choose, it's the logistics providers. Okay, and Inge, how do you view it?
I would say the brands. I'm sorry, Charlotte. No, yeah, of course, everybody has a role to play, right, in the value chain. But if I look, and coming back to Thijs' questions, in general, not all logistics, but in general, logistics, the margins are thin, and it often becomes a cost game. Well, if you would like to have that extra value of also sustainability, that demands, like, you see that the carriers or the LSPs, so the asset-light logistics parties, they will move when there's demands in there. So when, like, a shipper like Charlotte, for example, says, hey, what do you do on sustainability? And I would be eager to explore that together with you, or let's think about efficiency together, or I'm selecting my LSP or carrier also based on their sustainability vision and movement, because then we award also the parties that are moving on it. And in the end, if you ask for it, but in the end select on cost only, well, then for an LSP or a carrier, it becomes very difficult to keep that moving, right? So where do you invest your time and money on? Plus, I think if you look at logistics decarbonization as a whole, so we now talk about more, so yeah, the big leaps are in electrification or biofuels, what you said as well. But there's also a lot to win, I think, in efficiency measures on the right truck, the right size, container fill rates, etc. And I think there a brand does have a really a role to look at their own operations as well, and how can I find the efficiencies in there, because often the LSP is just asked, like, I want to hear it from this to this by this time, and of course can be like a brainstorming party in that sense, but the move or the willingness to change the operations is also the brand in that sense.
But this is what I mean, and I think it's a good point what you say then. Because now you connect the word efficiency to sustainability. And I think that's what I mean. So if you not only sustainability for the sake of sustainability, that's also good. but combine it with other goals and value that either you're a brand or you're a logistics player that creates additional value, the discussion becomes different, because otherwise it's always a cost or an obligation or a regulation upcoming. That's also a bit of a negative connotation. Whereas if you combine that with actually you can make your own operations cheaper or your own logistics costs cheaper, it becomes a different topic. And also not only becomes a topic of the ESG manager in a company, but actually becomes a topic of procurement or of logistics or of the operations manager. And then also creating the mass is then easier than just isolating the topic of sustainability. That's indeed exactly what I also mean.
Fully agree. Yeah.
Wow, that's so good. And it feels like this is all practice, but again, a good bridge to our next question. Because we now looked at the challenges between both the ambitions and where that gap between ambition and feasibility is. So now I want to move to the actual solutions that are already in place. So you touched a bit up on optimization. But Inge, to start with you, and I will ask this question to all of you. Where do you currently see real progress in making logistics more sustainable? And what is actually working today? What do you see in the industry?
Yeah, so if I look at the companies I work with, it's often a mix of reduction levers, right? It's not one. So look at your footprint and then see what can you do to carbonize. So think about modal switches. Do I need to fly it or do I go by boat? Does it need to go on a truck? Can it also be in a train? I think that's, it can also be efficiency measures, what we talked about, alternative fuels, electrification, biofuels, demand management. So does it need to be shipped today? Can it also be tomorrow to be more efficient? So I think it's a range of solutions you need to look at if you want to decarbonize logistics. If I look at more a promising solution that might take, especially what we now often see as more expensive solutions like biofuels and electric, to a next level, I think is the market-based measure or the book and claim instrument.
Can you elaborate on the market-based measure?
Yeah, so I think Spring is also involved in that, right? So take SAF, so sustainable aviation fuel, is hardly available or is limitedly available across the world. So there are a couple of factories out there, and it wouldn't make sense to bring that SAF, the sustainable aviation fuel, specifically to your airplane where your packages are on, right? So in that case, it would make more sense that you bring it into the airport, close to that factory, though it is significantly more expensive at this moment. We need a buyer for that to bring that in the infrastructure. Not even bringing it into infrastructure, we also need already buyers to build the factory. So there needs to be a demand signals to get the investment, to get the SAF factories going. And book and claim can make that work. So the one buying the emission attributes or the environmental attributes of the SAF doesn't need to be linked to that shipment or that airplane where your cargo is physically on. So it makes it in logistics really flexible to share costs. And to decarbonize in a more flexible way. And for, I think, logistics service providers as Spring, to have an offering that is not super complicated to implement for that one customer asking for it. Yeah.
And that is something that you now see growing in the industry.
Yeah, exactly. So you see a lot of parties creating standards around it because it becomes sort of an accounting game, right? So how do we do that properly? You see definitely a lot of logistical parties stepping into it and offering it to the clients. And more importantly, also brands or shippers looking into it, like what type of these deals do I accept and what not? Because, there is sort of, the standards are not there yet fully to support the full practice. So I think there's also sort of a consciousness, like what do I allow and what not?
Yeah, all clear. And Thijs, what would you say, where as Spring GDS can you now really make progress in sustainable logistics already today, or are you making progress?
Yeah, so like I said in the introduction, I think it's actually easier than many people think to make an impact on road transport. And we actually have two examples. Actually, one of them is standing over there. It's our famous orange pallet box, because if you think about the physical e-commerce logistics supply chain, it's an e-tailer making a package. They have to make it as efficient as possible. That's what they can do. Then it's about getting as many packages as you want in a pallet box and stacking that as efficiently in a truck. We were thinking about it, and okay, actually doing that, those second and third steps, investing in a new kind of pallet box like this one, reusable. You cut out a lot of cost, carton, wood that you can't reuse anymore, and actually already save a lot of cost, because by doing that more efficiently, here comes the word again, actually you're saving on your transport cost. So that was actually easier than I thought, that by doing not super big innovation, you invest something and you get something in return. That's one part that we significantly have done, which actually optimized the loading of our trucks. And everyone that's in logistics know, the more optimized the truck, the lower your cost. So here's a super concrete example. Yes, sustainability investments cost a couple of millions, but actually the return on investment is super quick. 1. 2 is very much on your angle that you said, that you say, because we are an asset-light company, we don't operate an own network in Europe. Then you think, yeah, how can I decarbonize a network that I don't own? Yeah, a bit of a difficult question, you think, but actually it's not so difficult. So by investing in biofuels, also if you don't own the trucks, and also if those biofuels are not actually in your truck, but by insetting it into the market, immediately your own emissions on road transport have decreased with 90%, 90%. So I think they're very tangible measures, and it's more a matter of choice how to implement that. So that's where I think we have tried the last years to really make concrete steps. And because we have the data, we can also show, also to our customers, actually your emissions went down because we have invested in decarbonization. So that is something very tangible, not very far in the future, and something that you can actually implement today.
Yeah, interesting. So it's also about the value chain collaboration that we need. And for Charlotte, for you, it's of course a different question, because you have logistics service providers. You already told us about that you work with. They can do a lot, making logistics more sustainable. But do you also see a role for you? Do you also have input there to make your logistics more sustainable?
Yeah, so at the sort of warehousing level, the concept of our product is that you buy a case once and you continue to rebuy the refill. We're able to ship our refills in a large letter sort of postal box. All of our packaging is recycled, and actually even the material of the refill itself is compostable. So you can throw it away and it will compost in your garden. We ship through this large letter so we can eliminate shipping air. The other things, similar to these reusable boxes, we're able to tap into the use of roller cages through Spring. So we're able to reuse them, it's quicker to load, and it avoids any cardboard waste and pallet waste. So yeah, they're two quite sort of easy things we've been able to implement.
Interesting. And just to follow up on that, because you focus a lot on circular, getting less waste, less resource inflows and outflows of your operations, but do you also look at other sustainability topics like CO2 reduction? Yeah,
I mean, every sale that we make on our site, we plant a tree. So that's something we try to offset our CO2 emissions, and it's really in our sort of DNA across the board, whether that's sourcing componentry like this compostable product, or not compromising on anything that's not recycled. We eliminate plastic throughout our supply chain, so we don't use plastic tape on our parcels or anything like that. But yeah, does that answer?
Okay, thanks. Maybe it's a good moment now. I forgot to say this in the beginning, but if you want to interrupt, please raise your hand. We have a colleague with a microphone, or he's getting the microphone. If you have any questions, please feel free to... we have one question. Oh, we already have two. Let's start with the one.
Yes. Is this working? Yes, perfect.
Hi, very interesting, and I used to be also in the circular domain, and one of the difficulties we always found is that how do you engage with your partners, the next ones in the chain, the prior ones, but also the follow-ons, which is super important, I guess, also for Spring, because you don't always own the network partners. So how do you engage them to become more sustainable? And my second question would be more to Charlotte. Effectively, hey, you want to be competitive on the one hand, where you said, okay, yeah, but you also have the price pressure. So, if you could dream a little bit further, how would it look like in 3 years from now to make that more sustainable standard for all of us that we can, adhere to? And then sustainability should not be the issue rather than the issue currently.
Okay, so to start with, Thijs, the question to you was then, if I repeat it correctly, how do you engage with partners for them to be more sustainable or to eventually be more sustainable yourself?
Yeah, it's of course a super good question, because indeed we are not owning the network, we're orchestrating the network. I would give maybe 2 answers. One is that what we're more and more doing, because we're actually procuring. So whether it's last mile or it's transportation. So in the choices we make of partners, you can make very conscious choices. Which last mile provider, how electrified is their fleet? We are actually starting to run an initiative on long haul with electric trucks, so a partner that can provide that. So that's a very concrete and direct one that you're shaping, let's say, a bit of the partner landscape around you. A second one, back to my example on the orange pallet boxes. We thought it was a good idea that we start shipping those instead of the one-time usage pallet boxes that we normally bring to our last mile carriers. Then of course our last mile carriers are saying, yeah, nice that you have that idea, but then I'm here with your orange pallet boxes. So it takes some time to talk to them, but actually in the end with almost all of them, they say, yeah, actually it's a really good idea, because actually you also help us because you're delivering us all these pallets and cartons, and we have a waste problem with that. So if you talk through, I see much more pragmatism that you would maybe think of than actually you start to talk with a local ops manager that thinks, okay, if you bring it, but by the way, if you bring it, also take the empty ones of yesterday back, you will also solve a problem for them. So there's much more possible than I think sometimes we estimate. So in that sense, you can quite directly influence and also engage with partners on that. But thanks.
Okay, great. And then there was also a question for you coming from the audience, and that is, if I repeat it correctly, how do you kind of create the demand for your packaging, and is it then also, are you then okay with others, competitors, copying the same thing and the whole industry moving? Is that,
Yeah, it's a great question. I think as a brand, it's our responsibility to educate customers, and we have a huge customer base who are willing to pay a lot more for personal care than something you can find at the supermarket. So there's always going to be a ceiling with price. You can't just charge whatever you want. It needs to be commercial, so we are limited by margins and things. But we've tapped into a customer base that do care about sustainability and do want to pay more for it. And then in terms of competition and what that looks like in 3 years, at least in the UK where the brand started, it was sort of a pioneer with this refillable deodorant sort of concept. And what we've seen over the years is a lot of other brands have started, copycatting, and we've seen even brands like Dove now have a refillable deodorant. And actually our response to that is that it's great. What we want is that refillable deodorant, and at least the message behind it, becomes the new standard. And what we want to see across supermarkets is that everything is that concept. And if companies like Dove start to do that, and they're continuing to spread the message that this is the way forward, we actually really celebrate that. So in 3 years' time, we would like to think that we're not just like a niche startup idea, and that concept is sort of the average, that's the way forward.
What I like about your answer, and I fully agree, is that if you want to create an impact, you always have, like, say, the first 10% is like the front runners, right? They're intrinsically engaged and motivated, etc., which is great, and you always need them to have the starting. But to create, in the end, we have to create mass, and especially in an industry that we're in, that is quite heavy on emissions, quite polluting. So it's not about the 10% front runners. It's actually about, and it's also not about the 10% real laggards. It's about the 80% that has the mass. So if you want to make an impact, whether you're a brand or logistics player, I think it should also be your aim to indeed get it, what you said, get it to a new standard, so that gets adopted. And by the way, if you're a front runner, you're also should be self-confident enough that you will find other ways, again, to be a front runner in something else. But I think it's indeed our responsibility to create the mass, and then you've really made an impact. I fully agree. Yeah.
Nice. I think we saw another question Yeah.
Thank you. The gentleman here stole half of my question too.
Oh, okay.
It was going to be to Charlotte. I mean, I just wanted to maybe just add, is it what are the trade-offs that your customers are not prepared to accept for the sake of sustainability? And have you been able to kind of prove that, that you don't have to charge more to be green? And I've got a second part, but I'll ask that after your answer, if that's okay.
That's tough. I think there's probably a lot in the product space that I'm probably not the best person to ask, but in sense of our product is 100% natural. So a lot of the ingredients that we use are harder to source. Producing a product that is, 96% natural is obviously going to be more challenging. So we want to obviously be offering a quality product whilst not compromising on those factors. From a sort of logistics point of view, I guess sometimes it's speed. So we obviously want to avoid air freight as much as possible, and we really track ourselves quite harshly on how much we are air freighting. So it sometimes means we have to say no to certain deals or certain launches because we're not willing to compromise on that. And same with the carrier, we choose large letter, we use these slower methods, so our sort of e-com customers might have to wait a little bit longer, but that's sort of the trade-off. And so far it hasn't been an issue because our message is really strong to our customers, so yeah.
And then just to change the subject a little bit, and hopefully I'm not preempting what you're talking about later, but this is the first conference I've been to where I've reached lunchtime on day one, and I haven't heard anybody talking about AI. And I just wondered, in a data-hungry or data-rich industry such as logistics, can we harness some of that data using AI to make the industry more sustainable?
Yeah. So you see data-heavy industry as logistics, yes. But this is the most data-driven industry. If you look at carrier side, not yet. So I think if I look at road freight carriers, for example, it's often smaller type companies, like small, medium-sized. Yes, they do have a lot of data in their telematics. Yes, they have their TMS system where a lot of data is in. But do they really unlock that data or have the data correctness to put an AI agent on it? So yes, you do see parties taking that angle, right, and that really become more data-driven. But it's a journey to make, and I think relating it maybe to the topic where we are in now. Yes, if we have AI, for example, can we optimize planning better because we have a more intelligence agent behind it? So yes, it can definitely bring efficiency to it. Do I see it already a lot? No. Yeah.
And maybe to adding to that, because it's a super good question. It was pretty tough. So what we tried to do, because actually our customers are asking, can you are presenting yourself as a logistics provider that's front runner in logistics, in sustainability. That's fine, but can you make me then a tailor-made report on my parcels that are shipped globally on how the emissions are? Very logical question. But it starts with, and of course there are all kind of data points, but getting that all in one source, regardless what later you want to do with this. In this case it was making an emission report on a customer level, but this capturing was the hardest part. Now we have that, then it's true, then the fun can start to use that and start to calculate where are the biggest mishaps, where's the biggest gain to be made for this specific customer, given his or her profile, given how large the parcels are, which destinations they ship to, what can you improve. But indeed, the challenge is there are so many data points, and especially if you have complex supply chains with a lot of partners, how to bring that into a single source, and based on that you can later apply that for all kind of usage. But that was for us, it was an easy question, but very hard. It took us maybe 2 years to really get that source done. Now we have it, now the fun starts.
Maybe if I can add from a brand's perspective as well, I think with AI, you have to leverage it to find efficiencies, and finding those efficiencies could end up avoiding wastage, could avoid knee-jerk reactions with air freight. It might spot errors that you could avoid return to sender, and it can sort of unlock, finding those mistakes.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see what AI can bring us in terms of sustainability, and also will cost us, but that's a completely different discussion. Okay, we're almost at the end already. Time flies when you're having fun, I guess. So I wanted to end on a positive note. So to all of you, I have some time to think about it, so I will ask it very slow. If there's one thing you would like this audience to take away after this 40-minute talk, or do differently after today, what would it be? Inge, you want to start?
So I would say calculate your logistics emissions and take a proper look at what can you do to decarbonize. I think there are a lot of options, both cost neutral or more cost efficient and more costly. Maybe that will take you the first step to get it moving.
Okay, good. So measure and then prioritize. Good. And Thijs, what would you say?
See the additional benefits it brings. So don't just see sustainability as regulatory, compliance, cost. Those are most of the time not the topics or the terms that you get super engaged of. I am extremely positively surprised that with investments that you make in sustainability, what add-on benefits that brings. I gave a couple of examples on cost reductions, but also, for example, on brand awareness. So the question to you, Charlotte, earlier about additional cost is true, but it also brings you value in the brand. Or the value that, let's say, people are more engaged to work for us because we are more seen as a sustainable partner. Or actually our NPS scores are increasing because we're investing in sustainability. Those were not the primary drivers. Actually, some of them we haven't even thought about. But if you're not investing in it, so you start investing and then you see next steps and you see next steps. So don't make it too big for yourself, but start practicing on small and then you will see advantages. And then it's not just a burden or regulations or costs.
Very nice. So just start tomorrow, or rather today.
For everyone, there's value, not just cost. See the value.
Yeah, thanks. And you, Charlotte?
I would say we're all customers, so make conscious choices, make the switches, educate yourself, and you'll drive that demand for the brands.
That's a very good point. So beyond looking at what you can do with your company, also as in your personal life. We might have time for one last question. If anyone has a burning question. Oh, I still see a burning question.
No, it's a little bit picking up on Thijs' point. So asking the hard questions when you go into the sustainability change should also drive innovation in your company or with your network. How would you see that? And do you have any examples to see sort of, hey, we really raised it, but we also raised the bar in other domains, what we wanted to really achieve as a company? So maybe an innovative type of thing or a hard conversation that you had, new insights with your team, something in that part that could also be very beneficial for the audience, I guess.
Yeah, so maybe a bit building on that and as I said, this was not an assumption up front, but by making sustainability a bit more intrinsic part of your company, that's what we try to do. It doesn't stay just a topic of the ESG manager, but then you also here is again about creating scale. So then my HR manager start to think about the role of sustainability within HR, or actually becoming an attractive employer. Or my marketeers start to become enthusiastic about it, saying, we can actually do something. That's what I mean when you create value. So that stimulates innovation beyond a core team. Those are, again, the front runners that are intrinsically motivated by ESG and want to run sustainability. But if you make it broader and incorporate it really in your organization, whether you're an e-tailer, logistics, you're a platform, I think that stimulates already by itself innovation. And one more final note maybe to say on that, what I also find so funny about the current situation. There's a current geopolitical situation, has impact on fuel everywhere around the world. It's very funny that the ones that have been front runner, companies, countries, they're actually way less vulnerable for all the turmoil that has been there. Was that a conscious choice back then? No. But you see that also if you're front runner, you're much more, you take initiative instead of you just wait until regulations comes your way. So that's also my strong plea. Start somewhere, because you then start owning the topic instead of just being a laggard, and then it becomes this more regulatory kind of topic. So I think it's very interesting stimulation actually for innovation, which was your question.
And if I may add to this, because I like your story, Thijs, maybe a project which we have recently done together with Spring is to look at all the lanes for the long-haul transport, so the bigger type of trucks. Not like we looked at the lanes and then see what could we already decarbonize, do a first assessment on can we make it cost effective, and how do we bring that then to the carrier? So even an electrification is still in quite some innovative space, right? Because not a lot of chargers are out there. For many carriers, moving to an electric truck is quite a capital-intensive step. So we really had the conversations like, how do we change the conversation with the carrier? How could we go in? How do we take also the internal Spring or our customers along on this journey to make this work? Which is also quite an innovative step and initiated by Spring because of their decarbonization targets and wanting to look at it. So it can even go further also outside of the company, I would say.
Okay, thanks all of you. So as they say, all good things come to an end. So also this conversation. But good part is Deliver is just starting. We will also be there, Spring GDS, and both of you will also be there. We have a stand, but we also are available here in the Sustainability Lounge. So just come and talk to us about sustainability. We like to talk about it. So yeah, have a great Deliver. And thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Tatum.
Thank you all.
Thanks. Thank you.